Hi everybody, it's Kate Quinn from Fabricated Quilts. Welcome to our Sunday Sew Steady live education events. So we'll give a minute for some people to go ahead and join. So hope everybody had a great week and you had some sewing fun, some creative fun, some good family time. So we're going to start today and we're going to focus on edge-to-edge designs that you can do with your ruler. And I've had people ask me this. This is such an important topic because I've been asked this so many times before. And we really haven't done that. Hi, Miss Colleen from Florida. Hi, Susan Digman. Congratulations. I heard that you were one of the winners this week, so I'm happy for you. Hi, Peggy Anderson. Hi, Linda Martindale. Wow, okay, we got a good group here, so we won't waste any time. So if you can do me a favor, give me a quick thumbs up if you feel like your picture is good and you can see really well. So I've put this under here because I'm going to tip the ruler up so I can show you some alignments in just a second. So let's talk about that. We are using the back-to-back 3-2, and this is one of the templates from the Fun and Fancy collection. So let me share that real fast. So as always, I want to make it very clear that the Fun and Fancy collection, although I have a product in it, this is a creation of Leonie West by Westerly Design. And so I did not make these tools, but I love them. I think they're amazing and fantastic. And we're going to show you a fun way to use that. So this is the collection, and then the Fun and Fancy Path to Ruler Work Quilting is my book. So I've put the link for that in the post if anybody's interested. The design that we're going to share today, in fact, all of the designs that we're sharing today are not something out of the book. They're trying to show you the technique of using that edge-to-edge functionality. So let me bring the ruler up really quickly and show you some of the markings. So this is the foot hook. The foot would sit right in there. And of course, the foot will ride along the edge, and it's going to sew a 1/4 inch away. So obviously the needle will be a little bit further up. The alignment right here, this center line that's right there at the top, is the line that we're going to be focusing on. So it goes all the way across here. And so obviously right here, there's no line. So we're going to either need to use this to align, or you can use this first reference line. So let me show you the template a little bit more. Notice that we have a shallower curve on this side, and this one is deeper. This is the 2-inch depth. So from the middle to the top is 1 inch. And then from here, from the center, is 1 inch as it curves. We want to use this side today, the shorter side. Can I use both sides? Of course, absolutely. But the way I've set up the design for today, I have made a 1.5 inch grid. So if I use the deeper side, the 2-inch side, the design can still work, but it will overlap, and I don't want it to. So we're going to be using this shallower side. So if I wanted to use the fatter side, this taller side, then maybe I would want a wider grid. Maybe like a 2-inch grid would be appropriate for that. So as always, I've tested this out and I've marked it on paper. So let me see if I can just give you a quick visual. Alrighty. So, you know, it's kind of scrappy right here as I drew it out, but it'll kind of give you some idea of where we're going. So this is what we're looking at. And you can see I marked this off because I didn't line it up properly, but I'll talk about how you line it up today. And we're going to just make this wave, and you can do it across the entire area of a quilt from edge to edge. So the grid that I have on here, I'm going to start with this mountain. I'll call this the valley, and this is the mountain. So on that center line that we started with, I'm going to line that up right there, and he's on this first reference line. So let's go ahead and pick up our thread This would be outside of the quilt right here. Okay, we'll assume that this is the edge of the quilt and that this is the body out here. So I could start out here and I could get myself into the quilt position if I didn't want to pull up my thread. I can just tack that off and then get myself lined up at the edge here. So line up this line, the first line, and you're just going to sew across. And you'll go all the way. Once you hit the hook, literally just scoot the template down, line it up, and you'll just keep sewing all the way across. Oh, I got a little bump right there, you see that? So mine isn't basted, I was being lazy. But we'll just kind of adjust it here a little bit to make sure it'll be nice. All right, let's see, let's get us back to where we were. So we were lined up right here on this reference line. So hopefully that'll get us right into where we want to be. And then we'll just keep going. Now I'm not too worried if the lines line up. As long as the curve is smooth, I'm going to show you what the lines are for. Okay, so out here, we're done with our first reference line. So the quilt bulk is out here on this side, right? And if I had a really big quilt, maybe I would want to start in the middle and work halfway out, and then I would turn the quilt so that half of the bulk is as much as would be inside the harp of the throat at any one time. My piece is smaller, so that's not necessary. Now, I can go back, right, to where we were. You can see that this is the line, and this was where we lined up the ruler. So we're going to move down one line, and we're going to stay with this first line as the reference. So this is what we did here. Each one of these spaces on this template from here to here and from the middle to here, from here to here, they're 1.5 inches. So every time that I shift down to one line, I'm going to shift over. So if I'm lined up here, this one, I'm going to line it up right there, but I'm still going to use that first center line, right? So this line now is lined up here. So we're offsetting it each time. So here I would be outside the quilt. I can pull up my bobbin thread if I wanted to, or just tack it in there. And we'll just keep going. Now, as long as the curve is smooth, I really am not worried about if this ends right on that intersection. This is just going to help us know how much we have to move over each time on the first line, right? So this is what I mean by, if we used the wider template, the 2 on this side, this is where you might see some overlap happening. Right now, we're going to have a little gap, and I want that gap. I want to keep it. That'll make it not too crowdy, but it'll give a little texture, which I like. And then we'll just use this line as we go across. So we're always going to keep lined up right on this reference line. So down here, I'm lined up right here, and then I'm using this side over here to line that line up on the other side. All right, so you can see here we're going to get that same a little bit of tightness right there. All right, so we'll just tack that so he doesn't come undone. We'll cut him. And then we'll just go back to this side. Now, we're assuming that your quilt is going to be well basted before you do this. So I have lots of people say, well, you know, you should go one line this way and one line that way. So you can try that if you want. I haven't found that if your quilt is well basted that that's going to make a difference. Okay, so here's our first one. There's our next line. Remember that we're going to keep everybody aligned on this. That's why I made this little star. So our first one was here, and then this one was aligned here. So the next line is going to be lined up here. In order to line it up here, we have to still have the first reference line right there, the first etch line, and this first etch line. And then this line is centered on this line. So again, we'll just sort of tack real quickly, and then we can just start sewing. Okay, so we're getting a fun little wavy thing going on. So in right here, when we move down to the next hook, all we want to do is just really make sure that this is touching really well so that we don't have a bobble as we transition. We want a nice, smooth curve as we come out of that hook. All right, so we'll get our last one aligned. So this reference line, the first etch line, and down at the bottom, the first etch line as well.
So this is the back-to-back 3-2. Can you clarify what B2B 3-2 is in the name and what the numbers in particular mean?
Okay, let's take a little breather and I'll let you see the design. And we're going to add at least 1 or 2 more lines so that you can see a complete repetition, because we use each of the spaces along here, but this space and this space are the same. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we start back over. We don't do one on this reference and this reference because these are the same. Somebody was asking about the name and the information about what does it mean back to back, and what is 3 and what is -2, okay? This template from this spot to this spot is 6 inches wide from there to there. From the bottom here, it's also 6 inches. So that means that if I split it right in the middle, this curve here is 3 inches. So this center line between this curve, that's 1.5 inches to there and 1.5 inches to there. And the same thing on this side. If it's split in the middle, each of these little segments is a distance of 1.5 inches. So you can use that information as you're planning. That's why this 1.5 inch is working really well for this design, because this design naturally splits into those segments. Now, it's the same on the top and the bottom as far as this and the length across. It's still 6 inches. But this curve right here is deeper. It's taller. So this is going to make 2-inch curve from the top to the bottom. And then this one will only make 1.5. So that's why things like this are great for swags and things like that, because you get different depths of curve, but you get the same measurement across the base right here. So maybe this one is 3 and it's 1.5. Well, this one is still 3, but it's going to be taller. So it would allow you to make another one in there that would be a little taller. So that's really fun for designing. So the back-to-back is a back-to-back curve. I mean, it's an S shape, right? And that's nice because then you can make one and you can continue having them go. So right here, essentially to right there, that's the one curve, top and then bottom. So let's go ahead and we'll do our last 2 rows here. If you ever can't remember where you were, you can just, start again and then, okay, wait, this one. Okay, wait, this one. So our next one is going to be over here. So let me get you all lined up. So this is the one that we just did. So we'll do this last one. So there's my line right there. And I can go ahead and start out in the margin. So we'll just tack it and get right up to the ruler foot. And then we'll just keep going. So I'm lining up everybody, and hold right up, hold your finger up in here. Don't hold back here because that'll tip him up. So get your fingers right into the curve. And then once you've kind of come to the edge of your finger, you can shift over so you have good support as you go. So remember what I said about the lines. One of the things to always realize is that the lines are going to go away. They're not going to stay on the quilt, so it's not like I have to hit the line exactly. This design has a lot of wave and a lot of motion, so if your wave is not perfectly aligned, nobody's going to know. So just, be confident. Don't worry about every little detail. This is a really flexible, free-form design. And we'll just line it up for that last bit to get us to the edge of the quilt. And we'll cut it. Now, the key that we want to talk about right now, so I'll kind of show you the design as we go. We did this as the center for the first one. So we have the 4 different ones that we talked about, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. This and this one are the same. That's where the hook transitions. So I can't use this one or it's going to change the design completely. The next one is going back to where we started. So you have 4 repeats, and then you'll start again with the mountain lined up like that. And that's going to give you that closeness right there. So let's go ahead and get ourselves seated right on there. And we'll kind of stitch our way down there. That'll give us a chance to tie it off outside the quilt. So we'll just get to that edge like that. And here we go. So you can see that this is going to quilt up pretty fast. It's just a wavy line, and you have the ability to embellish this and make it fancier if you want to. And I'll show you some ideas maybe for that if you wanted to. So right into the hook, and then just get lined up on your center line. And there you go. This is pretty relaxing. This is like meditation, quilting meditation. All right, let's tie it off. We don't need to sew the whole giant thing. I just want to give you the concept. So what did I use to mark out my grid? Hi, Victoria. I used just a ruler. I do have a 1.5 inch grid, but chalk, I didn't know if the chalk would make it to class. So I went ahead and I just marked it with my ruler. So doesn't that look awesome, you guys? So let's flip it over so you can get a better look at it without all the marks. So doesn't that look so cool? So that's a really, really easy design. It's not complicated. There's only 4 positions that you have to remember right at the beginning. You don't even have to mark all those other lines unless you're traveling a long distance. Then you might need that additional reference line as you go. So one of the things I want to point out on this design is this channel right here is now, it's an open channel all the way down, right? And then you got another one and another one and another one. So if you're somebody that likes to do free motion, you could fill in the alternating channels with whatever free motion fill designs that you wanted to do. And this particular design would be great for something like a Bargello or something like that, where the Bargello has really straight seams and you need something curvy to soften that, but you need something that's really good if you have a lot of seams. This is really fast, it's really easy, and that would be a great place where you could use it.
So could you clarify for Gisela, is the sample quilt book different from the book that you just showed?
Yes, okay. So the question is, the book that I just showed is called the Fun and Fancy Quilting Book, Path to Ruler Work Quilting. This book is the Fun and Fancy Quilt Sampler. This is not about quilting. This is a patchwork pattern to make the quilt that is shown on the cover. And what my intent is as we go forward, I'm going to show people how to quilt this quilt with the Fun and Fancy collection. So these two pieces working together, this is patchwork and this is quilting. So if you want to make this and then use the designs in here to quilt it, that between my two products. So this is all patchwork, no ruler quilting, no quilting designs, and this is all quilting all the time. Okay? All right, so that's our design. And this was the back-to-back. So obviously if you have a back-to-back 2 or a back-to-back 1 or something like that, you know, you're going to get something maybe a little tighter, a little narrower. It depends on your back-to-back. But any basic wave system of a template can do this design and quilt it up pretty quickly. Okay, so that's our first one. So let's go ahead and we'll get ready for another one. So I'm going to ask my production manager real quick if there's any questions that I need to address really quickly before we start.
Diana asked, how could you do this on a Bernina machine?
So I guess I don't understand the question.
Asking, like, you know, what would you need for a regular Bernina machine in order to be able to do ruler work, the ruler foot?
Okay, so Bernina can use a westerly foot, just depends on what machine you have. An older style Bernina is going to need an old style shank adapter. Okay, that means that it has the little prongs on it, and then you can use a low shank foot or a medium shank foot depending on which Bernina, and we have all of that information readily available on our foot selection info sheet. Also, if you have the Bernina number 72 foot, if you have a newer Bernina, you can use that ruler foot and you can do everything that I'm doing and be very, very successful. So if you want some more information, I have a little clip on my ruler work group on fabricated quilts, and it has information for Bernina users and what feet they need and different things like that. So if you are interested in that, come to my Fabricated Quilts Facebook page, and I just posted that this week, so it should be one of the newer posts that are available. Okay, so the next ruler that we're going to use is this Circles on Quilts spinning wheel number 21. And I had somebody ask me about this ruler, about splitting designs. So I think when I showed the Fun and Sassy Table Topper, I showed you how to use this template without a pin. And we're going to probably do that again today, just because we are trying to create an all-over design. If we have to move the pin every time, it gets really frustrating. So realize that it might not be as precisely super accurate, but it's going to be beautiful. All right, so let's see, I have a little question. What's the difference between the back-to-back? Okay, B2BS and B2B32. 3-2 is a single template, the one that I showed today. That's the number 2 in the 3-inch curve set. If you see the letters B2BS, that is a set, and that's why it's more expensive, because the back-to-back set is actually 3 pieces. Can you grab in that little pink box right there, honey? The little pink box right there. I'm going to show the other pieces in the back-to-back set. Alrighty, so let me grab these. All right, so if you really like the back-to-back templates like I do, then you can buy the set of them. So you can see that they're different. This one is very, very flat, very narrow. This one, in fact, is, let's see, is that the 1/2 inch or the 1 inch? I think that's the 1 inch. This one is even flatter. This is 1/2 inch. And then this one on this side, you can see how much deeper. This is 2.5. So this is deeper than the one that I'm using today, the one that I already used. And then on this side, in fact, this is that clamshell shape. So this is a circle, half of a circle, and then half of a circle the other way. So if you have all three of these, imagine what you could do with them because they're so cool. And the reason I chose the 3-2 is because that one is sort of in the middle. It doesn't have the narrowest, it doesn't have the tallest, and the circle is something that we often, you know, like the 2-inch circle or the 3-inch circle. A lot of people have those from the sampler set. So this way, you can use your 3-inch clamshell from your sampler set and have this shape, and you can integrate it with the template that I chose. So that was part of my thinking of why I chose this one, because it offers you a lot of great options. Then you can do a lot more things with it, and you can use it with templates maybe that you already have. All right, let's see, hopefully that answered that question. That was for Anne Monroe. And you know, the Fun and Fancy, it is a sampler set. It's designed to let you try multiple different templates that have really unique properties. Just like the sampler set that Leonie and Janet Collins initially started, they wanted to sort of give you a chance to explore something in each of the different styles and lines of templates that they had. And so my thought was to kind of do that same thing, and I did make it so that they can integrate with other templates that people might already have. Okay. Heike, hi, thanks for watching. I know it's late for you guys. I know it's late for Nana too. She said it was midnight last time. Okay, so let's start. So let's talk about these two lines and what they mean. This template is 7.5. So if I'm going to sew half of it, it's going to sew out at 3 3/4, right? Because that's half of 7.5. Well, if I made this at 3 3/4, then there's a potential that the designs would sort of, you know, touch each other right here. They're going to be staggered. I'm going to sew them staggered, but I want to make sure there's a little breathing room on purpose. So I made it just 1/4 inch wider so that the designs are not going to have any possibility of touching. So let's just start over here. We'll start in the corner. And again, if I was working an edge-to-edge design, and I wanted to start, you know, with the bulk of the quilt sort of in the middle, like how we are right here, this is the middle. I would do one side, and I would finish the entire side, and then I would turn the quilt, and I would work the whole other side. And that would mean that only half of the bulk would be inside the harp at any one time. If I started on the very edge over here, and I just kept pushing more bulk and more bulk and more bulk into this harp of my machine, eventually that would get difficult if you had a larger quilt. So always have to manage, you know, your quilt appropriately. So that's why I think it's good sometimes to start in the middle, because then you can make sure that the maximum bulk you're ever going to have in your quilt is only half at a time. All right, let's make sure to put our little tape on there. And I'll get these threads out of there. So how do we start? We're going to sew in from the center. So this is B and this is A. We're going to sew into B. So let's make sure we can get a nice pretty stitch right here on the edge. Okay, and then we'll line ourselves back up. Let's see if I can turn this just a little bit. There we go. So this reference line, let me put my little card under there so you can see. So there's a white reference line right there. And that line should be lined up right on my existing stitch line, and my foot should be tucked in now to A. And that pinhole right there should be on that line, and that'll help us get lined up. Notice that this top is touching right here, but remember it's going to sew a 1/4 inch away. That's your 3 3/4. It's not going to be 4. It's going to not touch that line. Okay, and now we'll do the same thing. We want to get that last little piece, so lining it up here and lining it up here and having your pinhole on your center line. Okay, and then the next one. Getting myself lined up. Oh, sorry, got to move different things out of our way. Okay. So for the next one, this is the half of the shape right here. We did half, and you're going to flip the template. So now we're going to do another one, but they're going to be kissing right in the middle. So we were like this, and now we're going to flip like this. So your pinhole will line up. This will get us sort of into that center portion of the design, right? We're at B, and now we're going to pivot to A and get lined up. The pinhole is on that spot, and hopefully that's nice and perfectly lined up. So I'm going to just shift my finger to make sure my key stays down. He's wiggling a little bit. This key is really, really wide, and so sometimes I'll put 2 pieces of tape or a really fat piece of tape, because otherwise he tends to wiggle a little bit. All right, so let's do our next one. So we'll get lined back up at A, pinhole on the line, center line, and the reference line. Okay, so same thing, spin it. Okay, so pinhole, but we're at A. Let's get us lined up right there. There's our reference line, and the pinhole should be on the line. Oh, I'm not talking very much. I'm concentrating. Okay, so let's get us going. Well, where are we going from here? So we've done half, and what we want to try to create is not this really rigid part of this design, but something that can move over a large distance. So the next line, we're going to go ahead and set that up as an offset of this one. So that's going to require just a little bit of marking. So I'm on this center line with my pinhole, and I've got to make sure I'm lined up right here, and then also this side. And we'll just do this last one, and this will be the end right here for this row. Now, in order to, I can go ahead and I could go back this way. I could finish off this entire design now and come back this way so that you'd have this as a row right here. So I'm not going to do that though. I'm going to just show you how we can plan for the rows out here. So we'll just pretend that this is something that I did the whole row. But it's nice because it allows you to complete this whole space continuously. I can fill this one in, and I can just start coming back the other way. And because our design is 7.5, you could even mark the centers here, and then you would have that as a pinhole reference. You could mark 7.5 along this line, and that would be your visual reference. So let's go ahead, we'll just tack this off really quick, and we'll cut that. Okay, so this is what we have so far, okay? And now what are we gonna do as we build out into this space right here? So I need a little marker real quick. All right, and this is my Collins Air Erase marker. I think a lot of people know I really like that. So right here, this is the middle of this design right there. You can kind of tell because there's a little bit of a stitch transition right there. So I'm going to put this on the line right there, and I'm just going to mark the center there. Okay, and what this is now the center of our new motif right here. So one of these is going to come right in here now. So I'll show you that. So by offsetting it like this, we create a little visual variety, and we are going to help our design fit into this space nicely. And see here, right here, we are lined up with this one, but we're not going to be touching it, which I like, because I would not really want that. I would want a little breathing room, just in case, you know, just in case things are crazy. I would want that. So here we'll sew into that A, and we have our center mark. So we'll line the foot up at B this time. And now, let's get this little thread out of here. He's in my way. So now I've even got the little visual right there to help me get this lined up. Right there. All right, and then we'll flip it one more time, get it lined up. Okay, and we're here, so we've got to flip it, and there's our center mark right there. So we'll sew in. And now we've got plenty of reference lines to help us keep lined up. We're here, and we're at the center right there. Now I made mine 4 inches, which is just a little bit bigger than the design, so it is kind of tucked into itself pretty well. But you could make the distance wider. You don't have to make it this narrow. You could make it 4.5, which will leave a bigger gap between the designs. So flip this one around, get lined up on your little mark right there. And so you can see there's not a tremendous amount of marking that's really needed for this. I wouldn't mark an entire giant quilt. I would mark it line by line and just use the little dots and little tick marks. You know, I started with the first reference line. And these lines, however wide that you want to make them, like if you wanted to make them 4.5, you know, you could make a few of those, but don't make these marks until you have the first reference line done. All right, we're lined up. And here I'll show you how we can go ahead and we'll finish this line right here. So then you can kind of get the concept. So if we are done with this part right here, now I can go ahead and use the same alignments here and line this up, and now this one will be filled in, that entire row will fill in. Okay, so same thing, and as you look right here, maybe just double check with your spacing gauge if your spacing looks off, but I don't think this one is. I think he's right on there. Perfect. Then flip him around, and you're just going to mirror this design right now. So let me pull this off. So this is what you're going to get. You're going to get this staggered, and you're going to have a little space in there. And that space, I guess it's about 3 fingers. So it's maybe 2 inches wide here at the widest part. So if you needed extra lines, you know, you could always do some kind of straight line fill in there. If you felt like this was too big, you can fill in a center. If you wanted something like a little circle right there, maybe would help to fill that in if you felt like this was too much openness. But you can see that this would sew up pretty quickly, and it's not a really complicated design, and you can vary the spacing. If you wanted it to be wider, right now, the way that we're doing it, it's going to be kind of a tight spacing. It's not going to be really open. But if you wanted more room in between the rows, then you would just make each of these rows a little bit bigger. And then you can make that decision. I would plan it all out on paper, just like we've talked about a bunch of times. I think that's going to help you make sure that you have the best look so that you know what spacing you're getting before you even start. So there's my little pinhole, and there's my straight line. Flip it around each time. So I'm lining up on the reference line and on the pinhole, and we're almost done with this row. Okay, and then we'll do the last one. All right, and I'll just tack it off right here. Now, we'll show you kind of how it looks. So there you go. So hopefully you like that design. That's just a fun, interesting way that you can go ahead and manipulate your circles on quilts. This could easily be done with a Spinifex as well. And this size of this design is 7.5. Well, I know we have a lot bigger Spinifex, like 11.5 or 13.5. So if you have a bigger design, your row is going to be much wider, and you'll be able to quilt up a large quilt pretty quickly if you use a bigger design. If I were to use, say, a small Spinifex on this, like a 5-inch, well, you know, that's much smaller. You're going to have to put a lot more of them in there. And you can always fill these in as much as you want to. You could put free motion in here. You could just put a straight line from point to point, from this point to this point, to this point to this point, and that'll split that and create more dense quilting in there. And that's a pretty easy, simple way to embellish this design if you wanted to. All right, so we're going to switch to another design. So I'm going to ask if we have any questions and kind of take a minute to connect with our audience if there's anything else that I can answer.
So a couple variety of topics. Kate, in your demo about the Bernina foot, you had the add a handle to your ruler. Is that removable to different rulers, or is it permanent when attached?
I love the add a handle. It is a permanent adhesive in the sense that it will stay on. You cannot take it off and put the handle on a different ruler. It comes in a package of, I think, 6 pieces. I'll have to confirm how many come in the bag, but there's 2 large, 2 mediums, and 2 small, I think is what I remember. I love them, and I used them for a really long time. I think my handle stayed on probably about 3.5 years before the adhesive was kind of worn off. And they are great. They really allow you to have your hand flat, and then the bumps of the ruler handle can kind of go like that. So you have an ability to move it like that. I just don't have anymore, but I do love them. So they're not removable. You would want to make sure that you put it on one, and then it's going to stay on that one. So the one that I found it the most useful for is I loved using it on my 12-inch arc right across the center, and then I could hold kind of like that, and then my fingers would be across the bumps. And it gave a little lift. It's a very secure adhesive. It won't stay on forever, but it stayed on for a really long time. Okay, so what's our next one?
Marge asks, can you use the Westerly foot with the insert for the heavier thread for couching on a Janome machine?
Yes, absolutely, you can. So you just would want to use whatever Westerly foot is appropriate for your machine. So if you have a Janome that is a high shank, then you want a high shank couching foot. If you have a low shank machine, you want a low shank couching foot. One of the things that you want to know when you're using the couching foot is your thread is coming from the front. So for example, if I had the couching foot in there now and the thread was in front of me here, I need to move in such a way that the thread will travel through the foot hook, the little hole. So I would want to go in that direction. And if I needed to go another direction, I would want to turn the quilt to proceed. Otherwise, the yarn is not going to get caught as well. So you have to kind of orient your sandwich very particular and have it be more in your sewing line. So it's not as flexible in terms of being able to go 360. You really have to have the thread coming off in the front. You can adjust the needle so that you have a tiny zigzag, which will make it a little bit easier to couch that thread. And then instead of a straight stitch over the thread, you have a real tiny little zigzag. You would set the zigzag by hand turning the wheel on your machine and making sure your zigzag will clear the foot safely. So I'm sure there's a whole video on that. That's such a cool product and it's really fun. But absolutely, you can use that in place of any ruler foot for 99% of the machines out there.
Lillian asks, when you mark up your fabric, is your sandwich already made, or do you mark the fabric before you make your sandwich?
Lillian, such a good question. Lillian's question was, do I mark my quilt when it's already batted, when it's already a sandwich, or do I mark the top first? Such a good question. I tend to mark when it is already batted. That is a personal preference. I don't think that's a rule. I think you could easily mark your quilt like by clipping it over a cardboard box so that it's nice and sturdy and not moving around, and that would give you a full, firm surface to mark. I don't like to mark an entire quilt because I use the air erase marker. So I tend to mark as I go. So I'll usually mark a small area and then mark the next needed reference line and then the next needed reference line type of thing. So that's usually the way I do it, but that isn't any rule. You should do whatever works for you. So any more, sweetie?
Marianne asks, what size ruler foot is a Brother VM 5100 Dream Creator XE?
So I will answer that, but I will not answer anybody else's questions like that at this time. That is a high shank. The Dream Creator is a high shank machine. So if you want to know what you need for your personal use, for your machine, please message me and I will help you. I will be happy to help you. But because we have so many different people and so many different machines, we really want to keep this something that's relevant for everyone. Okay, so anybody else, Daddy-O? Okay, so hopefully you like that design. I think it's really fun. I'll finish sewing these out and I'll put some embellishments in and then I'll post them on Fabricated Quilts or on my my Westerly group so you can get some more ideas. So I'm going to pull this one out of here and let's do one more. So the two that we have already done, they use the same template and then they just use different marking lines to kind of give you a concept. This one is an integration of more than one ruler, and it's got a lot of flexibility of different things that you could do. This space right here, we'll start in the middle and we'll kind of work our way out. So we'll work one side and then the other side, and this does quilt up pretty fast. This space right here is 3 inches wide. This ruler that I'm going to use is not 3 inches wide. It's only about, 1.5, I think. Yeah, so it's quite a bit narrower than this space. But I want the design in the middle of this channel. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that. And since that channel is 3, I'm going to mark it at 1.5 just to give me the center line. Don't want anything falling. Okay, so once again, get ourselves lined up at that 1.5. So each one of these 3-inch channels right here are going to have some type of similar design. So what I'm doing in order to create this edge to edge is I'm superimposing a design framework onto the quilt. Now, if I had patchwork blocks, maybe this is not the best fit for that. This would be something that, could benefit from a linear design that is very regular. And I can change the spacing of any of these. I'm just choosing this 3 inches at random because that was how big my ruler was. It was 3 inches wide, so I just made that channel. Okay, so let's go ahead. We'll get this all smoothed out so we don't have any puckering like we just did before because I didn't baste it. And we'll start at one end. All right, so we'll just, kind of be near the edge. Let's pick up that bobbin thread since we're in the quilt. I have to do the good practices, right? If we're outside the quilt, you can just start sewing. But if you're in the quilt, which we are right now, we want to make sure that we can pick up that bobbin thread nicely. right, so we're lined up right in our center line right there. We'll get these threads out of our way. Now, I want to make this continuous, and I don't want to have to come back and reline everything up and reset rulers and things like that. So I'm going to sew it like this. I'm going to make one shape, and I'm going to travel back to the center on the top this time. And then when I do the next one, I'll travel on the bottom. So we'll say this is the top and this is the bottom. Okay, so don't move the ruler. Travel back to the center. What that creates is, even though there's double stitching, there's going to be a pattern to it. So visually the eye will just track with that. And this way I don't have to come back a second time and line everything up. I just get all of these shapes out at one time. Okay, so then just keep going, and we'll just do the entire row. You'll just fill in this entire channel that you've created. All right, next one. So I have to sometimes look backwards and be like, oh, which side was the top? Which side was the bottom? It won't matter if you mess up. Nobody will notice. It won't matter. You can just keep going. Or you can just do them all on the bottom or all on the top. That would work too. It'd be fine. As long as you create the pattern and you just follow it, it'll work out. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and then I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to show you how we're going to embellish this to sort of create this pattern that we want to create. I guess I could cut that, right? Because we won't need him right there. Always put your key back on. Okay, so there's our channel. He's really cute. He's pretty basic, nothing fancy. We need to make some references now, so I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. This is 5.5 from 2 of these back to back like that. Doesn't matter what orientation, the distance is still 5.5 when we have 2 of these spinifex together. So I want to go ahead and mark a squared up mark right where they intersect. For every 2. And I can do every one if I wanted to, I just don't want to. So you can change this design and you can embellish it yourself to meet your own needs. Okay, so the reason that I made this extra little channel out here is I'm going to use this just as a spacer right here. There's not really anything in it, but now these are my reference lines for my next design. And let's make one more down here. So I'm just squaring the center up and just marking the reference line so I can get sort of to the end. All right, so here's our next template. So this is about 6 inches, and I selected this particular one because I know this is the 12-inch arc. So the 12-inch arc is going to fit very well in here. And if you see, there's a little dip right here. So I'm going to try and space him so he's right in the middle of this space. So let's go down to this end right here. So we'll set the template. So he's got to be a 1/4 inch away right there. Okay, and then same thing, keeping these lines parallel, and we're sort of aiming to put the center right in there. If you have the 1/4 inch space, he should be perfectly easy to line up, right? So then we'll just do the next one. and the next one. All right, one more. And then, of course, you know, you would keep going until you finished out the quilt. So let me show you where we're at. So what we're doing is we're creating sort of a row, right? And I'll just pretend that this next row, we would want to sew the same thing. So I would use the same reference marks. So let's go ahead and get everybody tied off because we need to continue those reference marks. So you can see that this will be done row by row, and then you would just keep making the same reference lines. So here, squaring it up to the line, and you're going to keep, I would even put it through the next channel down here because that'll help keep all of these lined up together. All right, and so I would maybe put this row in first, and we have the option, we can make these all go the same way, or we can make them go alternating. With the Spinifex, there's so many different options for how you can use it, but we'll go ahead and we'll just make them go exactly the same way. So let me get my center line in here so we can get him on. 1.5 inches was the mark that we needed. So I could have this all marked ahead of time, but if I do that, I can't really explain to you how I did it. So that's why I'm letting you see all the little gory details. And then because this mark doesn't stay on there very long, like I said, I only mark what I need. And that'll help also not have a lot of excess marking on the quilt. We really only mark what we need. Okay, so let's start up here at the top and we'll get lined up. So just like we did here, we'll set this right in the center and the foot should fit right in that same spot. And let's see if we can, I don't think we'll be able to pull that thread up. Oh, no, he's too short. There we go. I want to use that cutter, but he's always so short when he picks him up, so there we go. All right, so my needle's all centered. Get these little friends out of here. And we'll just follow the same pattern. Okay, and then we should be able to line up now on these reference lines here. And that tells us that our design is nice and symmetrical. So if you have the channels marked, you could just do all of these channels and then come back in with the 12-inch arc and do those after. And that would be another way that you can do it. It's not that these have to be done in any precise order, but if you're working with a large quilt, you would want to work from the center of your quilt and then work outwards. That'll help balance any fullness. So, you know, doing one side and then the other. And by doing the rows, you're stabilizing the quilt, sort of basting it, and then you can come back in with your 12-inch arc and put those designs in. right, and here's our last one. We'll get this one in. And let's see, I think we need to do this one on the top. So that'll complete our pattern right there. And we'll just tie him off. All right, so let me show you where we're at. We've got these two channels, and now we're going to put the arc in on this opposite side. So we'll set the needle. I would go ahead and I'd, tie him off, or we'd start out in the margin. Handy dandy spacing gauge is our friend right here. So that'll help us get right in there and get everybody lined up. Kind of looking to put this right in the center there. That's what's going to keep the arc even on both sides. And if you wanted to mark that, you could. I'm just kind of eyeballing it a little bit. So right there's that center line. So right there, trying to get him lined right up. So this one, I don't know if you can see it, but this last one is a little bit off. So I'm going to hedge my bet just a little bit and bring it down to try and de-emphasize the fact that he's wonky. So he won't match, but remember those lines will go away. So that'll help us kind of fix that a little bit. All right, so we basically have done the pattern set for this design. So let me spin it. So remember, all these lines are going to go away, and now you have a channel. So you could fill this, with straight lines. You could actually fill this line in, and then you could put another 1 or 2 lines here in the middle if this was too open for you. This could be a free motion space where you could put free motion detail in there. And I'll show you one more embellishment that I liked that I thought looked pretty cool. So let's see if we can line this up. So this is the spacing gauge right here, and we want to mimic this shape and put an embellishment in there. So we'll go ahead and we'll use that 1/2 inch channel, and that'll give us a 1/4 inch echo. And then here, you're going to travel. There's your 1/4 inch spacing right there. And you're going to travel until the foot touches right there. And then there's your 1/2 inch space. Check it in a few places. That'll help you make sure that you're nice and even. Get back onto the line, and then you can use your spacing gauge and travel. You're going to travel until the outer edge of that foot right here touches the existing stitch line like that. That's now a 1/4 inch. It's going to sew a 1/4 inch away, so we'll use our 1/2 inch spacer. And then there's one last one. So you can put however much density and detail into here that you want. You can just keep embellishing or keep adding pieces. If you have different spin effects, you can rotate 2 different ones to create a little different look instead of having the rows all be the same. And you can have wider ones and narrower ones. All right, so here you go. So doesn't that look cool? I love it with the double. I think it really adds a lot of definition to the space. So I think that's probably what I'd end up with. And then I can just put some fill in here. Or, we have little ribbons that can go in there. Anything that you want, circles. So you can basically create 2 different lines. And then this is a connective detail that kind of adds a little frame to it. And then you can just keep doing that. And you can do, all of these and then come back in and fill, and you can do different alternating fills type of thing, or you can make this one go this way and this one go that way. And that would be a really, really easy way to fill up a quilt. So it's not too straight, but it is linear. So that's something to think about as you plan for your quilt. The first two that we did would be fine to do with any type of patchwork, even very linear stuff, because they can change the shape. And you can even put those other two designs that we did on point, whereas I don't think that this one would be as pretty on point. I think it would definitely be more of a top to bottom linear look. So I'm going to check with my controller and see if we have some questions. All right, well, you guys, thank you so much. And last Sunday, let me grab one of my tools real quick. Last Sunday, we said that we were going to give away this patchwork pattern. And I got the okay from my partners at Sew Steady that instead of just the pattern itself, we are going to give away the bundle, which includes the adjustable ruler that goes with it, which is typically it's about a $29 value for that ruler. And they have discounted it to sell with the pattern, but we're going to give that away to some lucky person. So what we're asking, if you've already liked and shared from last week, we're still going to use that information too. But if you have not liked and shared and you're interested in this pattern, we ask that you would please like this video and share it with somebody else that you think might be interested. And we're going to do the drawing, I think on Wednesday or Thursday, and we will send that Fun and Fancy sampler quilt pattern and bundle out to somebody else that is our lucky winner. So please go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and give you maybe 2 minutes really quickly to put any last questions that you may have.
While we're doing that, could you just kind of review the products that are available and the differences then in the packages?
Okay. And so I'm going to just put these two up here so I can show you real quick. This is the Fun and Fancy template set. So 3 of the templates that we use today are in this sampler grouping. That's called the Fun and Fancy collection. And this book that I wrote has more than 100 different designs using those 5 templates. It has 32 basic designs, which includes motifs, fills, borders, and lots of different ways to embellish them and to use them, how to mark for them, and what each template has that is very unique, like its markings, its measurements, how you can utilize it best, as well as some general techniques that can be applied to lots of different templates, not just the ones in my book. So we are selling these together. So this is the Fun and Fancy bundle, and the regular price is $75 for both of these pieces. Along with that, you get a coupon for the Fun and Sassy table topper. And hopefully people now know that I have completed all of it. That quilt right there, honey, is what I need on the wall. Yeah, if you can just grab that whole thing. All right, and so originally I had not quite finished all of the videos, even though I had done the quilt. And I'll just show you the final quilt real quick. So all of the videos, including all the free motion embellishments for this quilt, are now available on the Sew Steady University. And this was with this 12 weight glamour thread. You can see the thread is super heavy. And then all of the little detail in here is done with 80 weight Deco Bob right here. And then I put some crystals on it to embellish it just for fun. So this class is available free with purchase of the Fun and Fancy sampler. And I'll flip it over, and this is the pattern for the Fun and Sassy table topper. It's just a single square. It's about 18 inches, but it's got different spaces that allow you to practice some of the designs from the Fun and Fancy Path to Ruler quilting. So you can see we've used different threads. We've used some free motion embellishments as well as our rulers, and just teaches you some fun ways to go ahead and get the most out of those tools right out of the gate so you can get some inspiration.
So do you know, does the giveaway include for the international watchers?
Such a good question. If an international person wins, I will send a PDF of the pattern, but I cannot offer you free shipping internationally. So if you win, I will work out something. We'll figure it out. We'll do something for our international people to make sure that they are supported as well, because we love you too.
Can we buy just the quilting book?
Yes, you can totally buy my quilting pattern. This book right here is available. I can send it out as a PDF if you want that. Just email me. The price is $22. It's a little cheaper because you're not asking me to print it. So I can definitely do that. I do want people to be aware that it is designed to be cut with the Westerly adjustable locking ruler system. And you can convert it. That is available. It's not that hard, but I want you to understand that that's how it was made, and that is how the pattern is written. So there would be some conversion required on the part of somebody not using the Westerly tools.
So I guess just to make sure I said Susan's question correctly, that's for the quilt top of it. I think she is asking about the quilting book.
So what was the question then again?
Can we buy just the quilting book?
Yes, ma'am. I'm selling that also. So that, go ahead and check in with me. The quilting book is the $22 PDF. And then I haven't actually sold this one as a PDF, but we can do that too. I'll figure that out and I'll put that information on my website if anybody's interested. So hopefully you were inspired to go do some of those edge to edge. I did post on Fabricated Quilts a request for people to let me know what they're interested in, because my brain is a little tired because I have to think of something new every week. So if you have some inspirational thoughts about what you'd like to see, I would love to hear from you so that I can definitely be meeting your needs and showing you what is useful for you and valuable for you.
Are these rulers just for domestic machines?
No. Okay, I am a long armor in addition to being a domestic quilter. Of course, I started out as a domestic quilter like everybody else, and I quilt on a frame long arm. I have tons of these rulers. They're all long arm style, and I love my Westerly rulers. So if you are a long armor, you absolutely could use these on your long arm, and they are fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So all the pictures that I put on my website of the inspiration quilt for Fun and Fancy, those were all sewn on my long arm as well. So absolutely, you can use them on your long arm.
What is Deco Bob?
Okay, let's see if I have some of that. Deco Bob is in that thread basket right there, honey. So Wonderfill is a Canadian company, and they make tons of thread. Right there, the thread box, baby. Right there. Right there, that. Thank you. So this is Deco Bob. Okay, it's made by Wonderfill. And what it is, it's an 80 weight poly, and it's a very, very thin thread. Can you see how thin that is? Really super thin. I'll give you a little frame of reference. This thread is 30 weight. Okay. This thread is 80 weight, and this one is 12 weight. Okay, so you can see this one is super fat, really super fat. This one is too fat to go in the top threader of any sewing machine, any domestic machine. 30 weight works really well. This is a rayon, and it sews beautifully, and it can be a top thread. And then this Deco Bob, I like it for doing any of the microfill work that I do, any of the little free motion work, because I can build up thread and it doesn't look messy because it's so fine, it sinks in, and then I can have lines that cross over, and I can have little circles around a bunch of times, and he still looks beautiful because the thread is so fine. So for any micro quilting work, I really like to use the Deco Bob, and it's also great for piecing because it's really fine and it's strong. So,
how many rulers are in? How many rulers did you use to make the pattern?
So in the Fun and Fancy Path to Ruler Work Design, there are 5 rulers, and I can just grab those really quickly. And I'll set them out here so you can see. So we use this one today. This is Circles on Quilts 21. This one is Spinifex number 8 at 5.5, because the Spinifex come in different sizes. This is the 5.5 size. This one is the back-to-back 3-2. And then This is called the Between the Lines circle, and it's a 1-inch circle, so there are more sizes of between the lines. And then let's see, what's our last one? It's the oval, this one. And then we have the simple oval, so I'll scoot this over. And the simple oval is actually 2-in-1, which I'm so excited about because they started giving us the interior oval as well. So really, these are 2 different sizes and 2 different templates. Even though they're a very closely related shape, it's nice to have the 2 different sizes with those. So technically, I guess you get 6, but I mean, really, this is the 5-piece set. You know, these are partners in crime. So there you go. So you get quite a bit of diversity, and we try to give you a Spinifex, a Circles on Quilts, and then this is a, elongated ruler with the wave, and it has 2 different sizes, and then the 1-inch circle, and then of course that has 2 different sizes. So you get a lot of options and variety with our Fun and Fancy collection. Anybody else, Sweetie Pie?
Can you use the Deco Bob in the bobbin?
I am often using it in the bobbin. Deco Bob is a terrific bobbin thread. It's very strong and it doesn't show very much, but it sews beautifully in the bobbin. I use it extensively in the bobbin. So yes, absolutely. You should definitely play with it. Just pick a neutral color and try it and see if you like it. And then if you like it, you can buy more colors.
I think we're done.
All right. Well, you guys, thanks for hanging with me to the end.
I'm sorry, so here's the last one.
Oh, last question.
Anne asked what rulers are used in the pattern, not templates.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me grab those really quick. I need that long one and those 2 triangles right there. And I'm sorry I didn't answer your question. I guess I did not understand it. So that's okay. I'm not going to blame it on you. All right, this is the Westerly locking strip cutter. And you can adjust this to make it line up. Now, this one is exactly what you see. So if I lined it up at, say, 3 inches, right down there, it's going to line up at 3 inches. If I line it up at 5, it's going to cut 5. Okay, so it has some little thumb screws that you can purchase, which are awesome because they make it easy to adjust without any tools, which I love. And then the 2 other pieces that you need to make it are the half square and the quarter square triangle rulers right here. And the one that comes with the bundle is actually a 7-inch square because there's a few squares that are cut for the pattern. And so that is just a way for you to see how those tools work with the locking system. And I recommend definitely buying the thumb screws because I did not have them. I did my whole video series with adjusting it with the ruler, with the screwdriver. And I love the thumb screws. They're so awesome. So just get those with it because they're amazing. So the way that these work is they allow you to cut the strip when you work with the locking ruler. And I've got a video that shows how to use these pieces that's free. It's on Facebook and readily available. So it kind of shows you how you can use these. But what I like is you're using a bias strip to cut your half squares, and you're using a straight of grain strip to cut your quarter squares. And they're super accurate, and you're using a strip cutting method, so there's very little waste using those tools. And so, right away you can have 20 or 30 different sizes because it has a 1/4 inch size differential from 2 to 6 inches for these smaller ones. And then if you were making really big quarter and half squares, then they have from 6 to 12 as well. But this is the size that you're going to need in order to cut down the Fun and Fancy sampler. You can convert that if you want to, if you feel comfortable. There's tables out there that show what size pieces to cut to get a 5-inch finished half square or a 4-inch quarter square or whatever. There's charts out there. You can do it. I just want people to understand that if they purchase it, those charts are not in there because it's designed to use these tools. So this is going to factor in your seam allowance. I don't have to say, I want a 3.5 inch. I just want a 3-inch finished. Well, then I would line this up right at that 3. And when I cut the appropriate strip with the strip cutter, that's going to factor in whatever seam allowance is required. So these 2 pieces, the 2 triangles, they factor in that seam allowance so I don't have to do any math, which I love because it's great. All right, so I'll link to that video with that shows these tools, and Leonie West has a video of using them as well, and she does a great demo with them as well. So if anybody's interested in that information, I'll go ahead and link that and put that up in the description. So if people want to see that, they can. Okay. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for sticking with me. Have a wonderful day and happy quilting. And look for Wednesday or Thursday, we'll be announcing the Fun and Fancy Sampler Bundle winner. Okay, have a great weekend.